Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trees Talk again, and I'm very happy to have Julia Francis, artist and podcast. Well, lots of things.
Lots of mediums.
Lots of mediums.
Yeah.
So again, I don't necessarily have an agenda, but I mean, it's interesting. Julia's partner Alex was on the show about a week and a half ago, and you're both mixed media artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I will admit that I hadn't known your three-dimensional work, but and I was definitely have been a fan of your two-dimensional work that I've known. Mm-hmm. But your three-dimensional work is really very rich.
Yeah.
So I'm interested. I don't know, maybe to hear sort of about how that. Have you always been interested in multiple medium? Did that happen organically? Did you have a single medium kind of inroads to starting to make work?
So I did not know that I ever wanted to work in three-dimensional mediums at all, like in any form. In 8th grade I knew I wanted to be an artist of some sort, and painting was like the first thing that I knew that had like come into my presence of like being an artist means you're going to be a painter, in that sense.
Sure.
You know what? I'm a liar. I like, you go
I wouldn't
through.
say that.
No, in a sense, I remember, you go through these periods of time where you're like, something happened and you just forget it. It just like disappears, and it just came back to me right now.
Okay.
I made a sculpture in high school that was a kangaroo. We did paper mache sculptures, and generally people do them at like really small scale, and it's just like working the materials. But we did large ones, like very big one, and I was like, I'm gonna make the biggest, best one that I could. And I remember though I did go through a period of time where I was like, I love painting, I only want to do painting, like I'm gonna be a painter and that's it. But this like little blip just came back to me of like making this kangaroo, and I made it all these crazy colors, and it was literally like this big, like
How old
giant paper mache. 15,
Okay.
16, 15 or 16. I can't remember the exact year, but I put all of my attention into it, and it won first place in the whole art show, and I held on to that thing for so long until it finally like fell apart. And and that was in Tennessee, and that's why it was like I'm so detached from it, but I just totally had that like recollection. Of course I did 3D sculpture, but with all that aside, I definitely went through a period of like, I'm going to be a painter. This is what I need to do. This is what I have to do. This is who I am. And so I went through many, many painting classes in community college. El Camino Community College in Torrance is where I went. Yeah. And I loved it. I had an amazing teacher, and he taught me. I understood everything that he was teaching me, and I got it so well. And then I ended up started teaching other students in the class what I was doing, and he had me sit with him side by side, and I was like so confident in what I was doing. And then I went to Cal State Fullerton, and I like lost all of it. It was like
really,
yeah, like the idea of like who I could be as a painter, like how I understood painting was just like completely lost on me. And so then I went through a series of like being pushed to experiment with all these other materials, like the teachers have us do. Like we work with paper, we work with collage, and we work with try everything and anything or whatever. And then it wasn't until like the last semester that I finally was like back into sculpture, and I was like, I'm gonna try this out, why not? So
do you feel more of an affinity I'm not trying to get you to choose, by the way, but I'm curious if you feel equally I don't know what the word is, maybe affectionate toward all the mediums, or is one closer to your heart, or are they all, does it just depend on what you're doing?
It depends on what I'm doing. Like I really do love painting if I can like get past that little first hump of like starting, like most artists can understand. It's just like once you start the dang thing, like, and you find where the flow comes in, and you find the confidence in the material again, like you're like, oh, this is awesome. Of course I love this. I love doing it. And I feel like I can be really successful as like a painter alone. I mean, personally, if I thinking about my own like strengths, but being able to work in multi-mediums has definitely like opened up what can happen in the art world, at least for me in particular, and for my partner Alex, who was also doing that as well, and he was always working on flat stuff too, and so him and I simultaneously just were kind of like, we need to like reach things forward, and things need to come out of the walls, and they need to be like moved in a different way, and they need to come out of the ground, and and so
well, one of the things about your work that actually strikes me is that your three-dimensional work and your two-dimensional work, they definitely are related in terms of content and subjects, but it's one of the things I really like about them is that they don't feel formulaically similar, which sometimes some artists do, and I think that's okay too. But yours is really, I mean, your objects have a very different feeling to me. And I'm curious if that's something that you're aware of, and is it by design, or maybe I'm just curious how you react to that.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like anything that I made during my time in school, I feel super detached from. I don't feel like it was definitely just me kind of like experimenting with the material more so, and just like in the moment, like I did the orange paintings, and I was like, I'm interested in oranges, and I'm interested in this style, and so I was like, maybe I want to be this type of painter. Of course, so I did the oranges, but I never see myself as being like that type of painter. That was more so just going through the motions. But once I got to the iris panels, and that's what I had put in I made all of those panels for my final exhibition before I graduated in the exit gallery,
right?
And those came so much more naturally to me because of the material changed for me. Like I worked on wood rather than on canvas, and I spend a lot of time outside hiking, camping. Like nature is like where it is like number one for me, and I will always come back to it in some sense, and it'll always give me something. And so when I started making the panels, I was like, this feels like really me. And so I named all of them self-portrait.
Yeah,
because
I saw that. That was interesting.
Yeah,
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so they're all self-portraits in a sense because they are literally pieces of me and how I see myself relating to nature. And they're all irises because the state flower of Tennessee is the iris. And so that was kind of me trying to tie myself into where I came from and the appreciation for that and why I feel so connected to these materials in the first place. And so looking at those panels and how they relate to the sculpture, it was just kind of like, to me, a natural like next step from like putting something on a wall that says this is who I am, this is the materials that I relate to. Now let me put myself and maybe put others who come around this piece into the environment that inspired me in the first place.
Right.
And so I feel like they have that similarity for sure. There's a connection there, but I like the idea of them not necessarily like you look at this and like, yeah, that goes with that, or this is directly related to that. I like that there's some kind of there's a way to differentiate between yeah.
Well, I don't know if this is just me. I mean, and so this is just a personal observation. But one of the interesting differences between like the iris paintings and the objects is that the iris paintings do still feel, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but they're very formalized. They kind of remind me of Chinese or Japanese paintings on those screen paintings. They're beautiful. They really are beautiful pieces. And I was going to say, but it's not a but. But the objects really feel like experiences. I mean, in some ways they remind me not of Alex's work, but his work does have that quality of it, like it's an experience that you're having when you look at it and dive in. And your objects really feel like that to me. Like they kind of feel like hiking at Joshua Tree, and so those two things are really, really different in your two-dimensional versus, for me, work. And I may just. It just may be my reading it, but I'm wondering if that's true for you, or if it's all the same for you when you're making them in your mind or in your body or whatever.
Yeah.
I know it's a really kind of tough question.
I know.
And you don't have to answer it.
I don't know necessarily how to explain it. I mean,
I know.
I guess I can explain in terms of the process of making them. Like the iris panels, I didn't necessarily plan at all. Like they were like, Alex actually was the first person to introduce me to being able to work on wood panel, reclaimed wood panel specifically at that size, framing it in the way that we did. He helped me kind of like do that and understand that until I got to a point where me being able to do it myself. And that's what opened me up to being like, okay, these materials can really set me into like what I really like appreciate and what I would want to do, like what I want to take from my own personal life and put it into my artwork, rather than just like seeing an orange and being like, I want to put that on canvas. It's not necessarily something that I like relate to. I mean, I like an orange, but that's about the extent of that, right?
No, I got it. Sure.
This was like, these were not planned. I literally like went in front of them and I spent maybe a night to 2 nights on each one.
Are the flowers invented? Or are they observed, or a combination?
A couple of them are kind of compiled from my imagination, and then the rest of them were observed from photographs.
Okay.
And a couple of them I took the photographs myself, and then another couple of them I found the photograph online, because there's more ornate irises out there that I just can't find around this area.
Well, they are very ornate, and that's interestingly, well, I guess you could call the big branch piece kind of ornate, but it's kind of wild. There's something wild about the sculptures. Is that the right word?
Yeah, I would think so.
And I'm also interested in reclaimed materials. What that seems important to you. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
And even in the crate project, which I thought was a really very interesting project, particularly in the crit class. I was great for the other students to see that project. It was great to have you guys in there. I mean, it really kind of changed the class in a great way.
Good.
But anyway, so yeah, I'm interested to hear about that aspect and how it entered into your work, and it seems like a really important part of your work.
Yeah.
Even in the paintings, which are those also reclaimed panels?
Yes.
So even on a very formal painting, I'll just say this: the fact that even in your title, you feel it important to tell people that these are reclaimed panels, because some people don't care about what the viewer sees or knows.
I think it's important.
Okay,
for
so
sure.
yeah, I'm interested to hear about that.
There was a reason why I put reclaimed.
Right, I know that. That's why I put exactly what you wrote. You know,
I can't remember the last time I went to the art store and like bought a canvas, and because now that I am in a space where there is an abundance of material around me, like waste to me is like, it literally is just like hitting me in the face all the time, you know, especially in a city like this where there's such a huge homeless population too, and people just, there's so many people, you know, who live on the streets who have to put their trash on the street, and people who are just mindless and just throw the shit on the ground, you know, and there's just dumping everywhere. It's just everywhere. Like, why would I ever buy anything to make stuff, you know, when it's just around me? In the studio that we're at, when you come to visit, you'll see there's just an abundance of material that's just left from other artists by the dumpsters, and people always pick it up and reuse it, and it's readily available. And so everything that I've done for sure has been with some sort of material. And, you know, I didn't, you know, of course didn't stop with the materials that were around the studio, because we went out in nature, and there's still so many things like that are laying around, you know, like fallen trees and, you know, stump pieces and just like sticks and, you know, all kinds of stuff. It's there readily available to use, and it just makes it more relatable and more interesting. And so I mean, it's important for me to use it, but it's important for people to know that they can also use those things as well, and that's why that's why I put in there specifically reclaimed.
Yeah, and I guess in the case of the paintings, perhaps it's even more, I don't know about important, but maybe it's surprising because they're so formally painted that you wouldn't necessarily know that they were reclaimed, right? Okay. Yeah,
and that's definitely like one of the things that I had always struggled with as an artist. Like you know, a lot of artists want things to be like perfect the way they envision them in their minds, right? And some people can follow through with that, and they can really work on things for a long time to get them to that level of perfection that they perceive in their mind, or they perceive through somebody else's work. And some people just can't, and they just like are able to accept that it looks this way or it didn't look this way. And so I've always like struggled with trying to let myself go in that way and be like, you're a very formal painter. I mean, I remember that in the class too. You're an excellent technician. Thank you. But maybe, does that ever plague you? That's what I was going to say. It plagues me all the time. I'm like, I would want to paint a flower exactly how it looks, because I just have that within me, even though like it just doesn't, it won't ever necessarily translate that way. But I definitely start off like, okay, this is going to be as realistic as possible, you know. And so with the iris panels and with being able to let go of just working on a traditional, how do you let go? Is it a mind trick? Do you have to talk to yourself? Do you have to talk to yourself? Is it? Sometimes. Really? Yeah, I'm a very emotional person in terms of how I handle my stress and how I handle my ability to like get past something. Like I will definitely like expel, like I have the natural knack of being able to like harness all of this energy that I have like into my face, and then I can just like release it in the form of tears, and not necessarily like I'm sad or like upset, but it's like pressure is like released from my face, and that actually does help a lot. I think more people should cry because it can really help. Since my recovery, I've definitely I'm with you on that. Yeah. So I mean, I was kind of half joking in a sense there, but I do practice a lot of yoga, and of course that helps in so many ways. Although I've been on a little bit of a hiatus recently, I just like you're very busy. I couldn't get myself to go to do it as regularly anymore, you know, because it's like, where do I want to exert my energy? And even though it's helpful, it does take energy, and so.
No, I mean the reason I do it, Julia, is that if I don't, I can't actually walk.
Yeah.
I'm kind of older.
It's great for body pains and and stress.
I mean, but actually
too,
for me, and I want to talk about you, but for me, it is actually part of my recovery and meditation and yoga. But no, I mean, as busy as you are, I was going to ask you if there's kind of like there's no way you could do everything you want to do in a day. Is that true, right?
Oh, no way.
So do you have to sort of like decide on rotations of certain things at certain times, and how does that work?
Well, I have a schedule now. Because I'm naturally such a detail-oriented person, I definitely do try to make schedules and plan out things. But every time I go to do it and I'll write a few things down, I always feel like I remember it so much, and in a sense that I don't ever have to look at those things. So I'll always start calendars and whatever, this is what I need to do on this day, and then I never look at it, and then I overwhelm myself because I have all these ideas and stuff. But I did start another schedule today because we are at the point of okay, now there's way too much shit.
You guys really are at a critical mass.
Yeah, every day something new, new opportunities coming up, or a new client to work with. We were just essentially given the Happening in DTLA count to run as creative directors, full scale, to maybe
I knew that.
This happened in the past few days.
Jesus.
You might not have.
Maybe I'm not.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, it's still owned by the owner who bought it.
Right.
But we are taking over the creative direction of it, and we're
working. Whole, not just the podcast. Then you mean the whole
podcast.
Do you want to talk a little bit about DTLA? I don't want to distract from your work, but it seems like it is part of your work.
No, it's part of our work. It's becoming now a full-time job, and I think it is important to talk about it because it is something that a lot of creatives can do and translate their work into. I had resisted this kind of technology, and I always take hiatuses from Instagram because I'm I hate it. It's ruining my life. It's
I
all
love
these
it.
things. Yes, it has so many perks, and now I found a way to utilize it to my benefit and to see the true value of it. So now I think it's awesome. I think it's great. But
do you want? Maybe we should back up and talk about what DTLA. Some people know, but maybe my followers don't know about it.
Happening in DTLA, if you don't know the account already, is a large platform that focuses on all things in downtown LA and somewhat of the surrounding area, not much, but focusing on events, restaurants, art-related things like the arts community,
sports too.
Sports, all kinds of stuff, and it was started about 5 years ago, and it just recently transferred owners, and so we were good friends with the owner, and he brought Alex and I on to run the art aspect of the account, which hadn't really existed before.
Right.
So we created Artery DTLA as a way to focus on specifically that.
Yeah.
And
you guys do a great job.
Thank you.
By the way.
Thank you. Yeah, and the guy who owns it is pretty impressed with what we're doing there, and so he's asked us to do the creative direction for it and work with the clients, the restaurants, the event spaces, hotels, all that want advertising. We will be doing the photography, the videography for them, posting them on the grid, doing reels and stories and IG Live for them and all kinds of stuff. It's going to be if it really, takes on at the level that we are expecting it to, it's going to be you'll never see me again.
Hope that's
I'll
not
be
true.
in my bed this all the time.
maybe we'll see each other on Zoom.
I know.
That's okay. This is, we do have, me and you and Alex do have we were talking before about the serendipity of us kind of meeting up again, which I definitely feel is really amazing.
Yeah.
But it also, for me, is on the level of I also made a transition from being, the way I describe it is I was sort of saw myself as an army of one, which I don't think was good for me health-wise. I'm not judging. There are some artists who are like that who I think are fantastic artists, so I'm not saying it's a bad way to go. But for me, I could never figure out how to work my interest in social practice, because even before the idea of social practice was that buzzword, back in the late 80s and 90s when I was in grad school, I really fell in love with the artist Joseph Beuys. And of course, he was sort of like the original social practice. Well, there were other people, but he really made it quite famous.
Right.
In a white cube art world, even.
Yeah.
And so I could never figure out how to make that interest of mine work. And somehow this idea that an artist is supposed to be this solitary, curmudgeonly romantic figure, I never really liked it, but I bought into. Anyway, I feel like what we're all doing is a way to engage that in a really cool way, because it's really not about galleries, although it could engage them. So I guess I'm interested it sounds like maybe we're in, even though we're different people, we're in a kind of similar place that way, all of us. And do you feel that way about it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're approaching it in a different sense, but
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know this, but I guess I'm curious because you said a minute ago like it is part of your work, and so I guess I'm curious. It took me a little while to actually feel like, oh, maybe it's okay if this is part of my work. Like it shouldn't be. This is fun.
Yeah.
This is like, am I just calling socializing art?
Yeah.
I felt a little weird.
Yeah.
But now I do not feel weird. But I'm curious if you had to make a transition, or if it was hard, or if it's still hard.
It's still hard. I like even just a week ago, I was laying in bed feeling like terrible at myself because
really?
It was like and I was
for that reason?
I was literally crying. I was like, Alex, this is such a major distraction in our life and in our relationship and all these things. And I was like, and I like I said, I always go back and forth through periods of like, I hate this. This is the best thing. I hate this. Like I just because I unfortunately always try to plan too much in my life, and even my years, I'm like, this next year I'm going to do exactly this and this month and this and that, and it's just like, it's so like haunting, you know. I'm like, I didn't do that plan right, or I didn't do this right, this is not working out. And I've gotten to a point where I've spent so much time on social media, and I never wanted to get there. Like, why am I doing this to myself, you know?
I see.
And so like even last week I just had like a moment where I was like, this is not what I want, you know, or whatever. And then I woke up the next day and I was like, here we go, you know, we went through it again. It's fine. Like,
well,
but it's just my process of working it out.
I was just going to ask you, like, because I know for me, like, I know this is like a stretch, but my painting teacher that I studied with said that every painting, every piece that you make has he called it like a minefield, and I call it a pain in the ass, a thing that just doesn't let you off the hook.
Yeah.
It makes you fucking pay for it.
Yeah.
And it might be the background in a painting, or it might be some super easy object that you just take for granted, but then you kind of get in the quagmire. And so I wonder if just maybe this is that part of this practice.
It is. It's just, you have to just restructure your mind to realize that it is the same as painting. It's the same as sculpture. It's the same as drawing or like any other medium. It's like, it's another medium to work with. And unfortunately, it will still just have those. And, I mean, and fortunately, we'll have
maybe it is fortunate.
Yeah. And it has the same path. And you just have to understand that like it can give you so much if you open yourself up to it. It's another medium. You're a creative still, and I believe that I'm the ultimate creative in this way, like being able to accept the fact that I can, you know, take what I've learned physically in that creative sense and translate it here to now like making these little reel videos which reach tons of people. It's like so crazy how far this reaches, you know, and it's so quick too. And so it's really interesting that we can affect people in that way, you know, rather than like waiting for somebody to see your painting. Yeah,
and I really feel strongly that it's not in an arrogant sense of the word. I mean, I think I was saying to a friend of mine, or I've said this to a few people, to me the new avant-garde artist is one that builds things. And because it used to be kind of tear down the old structures, and they needed tearing down. They needed kind of, you know, irony, and but I really feel like that's not where we're at.
Yeah.
You know, and so radical avant-garde seems like, I'm not saying maybe it never will have its place again, but I don't know if if that's what we need.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, it's interesting. It's interesting that we're talking about this because after I lost track of time talking to Alex, I know.
It's all good.
It's all good. But I actually, after that conversation, I literally had the same feeling I had after I made a good painting. I noted that.
That's good. Yeah.
I know. So I mean, so what you're talking about, and I'm getting that feeling right now.
Good.
Actually. So yeah, like it feels like it's worthwhile work.
Yeah.
Or something.
I mean, one of the main goals that we have with Artery DTLA is to talk to other creatives, even if the video itself only reaches like, you know, 2-3 other people physically would see it. Like our goal with the connection with that other artist is that hopefully they feel inspired to make something. Yeah. If they hadn't made anything in a while and we're talking to them, hopefully we're getting inspiration from it and we can just build off of each other, and that's the power of connection in that way. And we were like super worried that we're going to lose a huge amount of that with the pandemic happening. And so like being able to maintain a connection with a community is awesome. And that was, you know, what we're doing. And social media is obviously the fueler of that. So
And I don't think I don't think that the pandemic, well, I don't know if it's ever going to end, but I don't think that the connection thing is going to. I think that things have been altered in many ways that we can't even figure out. Mm-hmm. For me, certainly. I mean, I have to say, when I first joined Instagram in November, my students just thought it was fucking hilarious because I was the biggest curmudgeon. You remember? I think I used to rant against it even in the. Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious. I'm really eating my words in many ways, but I think it's good. So, it's kind of feeling
like, yeah, we know, Joe. We told you so.
Yeah. That in Disneyland. I still haven't been to Disneyland, but I'm going.
Yeah, Disneyland.
Yeah, I'm going to go somewhere.
You got to get out there.
That's what we did talk about.
Yeah.
I'm going. I'm going to go as soon as when it opens. I'm going to go. So, do you feel? But okay. So when you're flipping between, maybe that's the wrong word. Is flipping between your podcast and your own personal work? Does it feel kind of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde-ish, or does it all actually feel similar when you're doing it?
It feels different.
Yeah.
I think because when I don't necessarily think that I have a huge like personal presence on like Artery or what I'm doing on social media. I post pictures of myself sometimes, and I have the moments with with Artery that I am like, we're on the podcast and we post the videos of ourselves. But I wouldn't say that with Artery it's like it's me, like I have this huge physical presence, but when I'm doing my murals or when I'm doing my drawings, that feels, I don't know, I don't know how to explain it. It's such a weird, it does feel like an alternate me. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. It feels like an alternate me, and when I'm doing the drawings, it feels like a more like polished, contained version of me, where I'm able to get out that kind of like tedious side of me, where I want to do these like little things, and it's a different feeling.
Right.
Man, it's just a weird one. I just like cannot conceptualize it.
But in some ways, I think it's I think it's honest and good that, because I think the idea that you're supposed to conceptualize it is actually one of the things I call bullshit on from art school. The idea that if you can package yourself that you're smarter, better artist. I do not think that's true anymore. I truly do not. I know that some of my colleagues truly disagree with me, and I respect that. But I don't know. It's interesting because this poet named Paul Celan, who's this very difficult German poet, like he was a Holocaust survivor, and his work is very, I'll go into this for a second because I think it's relevant. His work is difficult even for Germans because he creates these weird anyway, he's an interesting, weird poet. And people were constantly asking him, what does it mean? How do I get into this? And he said, you know what? Just read the poems. Everything is in there. Just hear the sound of it, and you will get what I'm saying. In other words, don't talk about them. He didn't want to talk about what they mean. He just was like, the meaning is in the poem.
Right.
And I just think that is really, like, I don't think, he was not being a smartass or difficult. He wasn't being like Duchamp, like a smart aleck.
Yeah.
He was sincere.
Right.
And I think your work, I have a feeling, is the same, in the sense that you don't need to tell us about it, because your work does have a strong feeling. All your work does, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so why should you be able to explain it to us? I mean, why is that?
No, you asked me.
Well, but I wasn't really asking you to explain it. One of the things. Okay, no, that's true. That's fair. Touche, Julia. But the truth is, I didn't expect an answer that was like explaining it. It's more like, in a way, I think the value to some of these conversations, in my mind, one of the reasons I started my podcast was that I wanted to kind of get rid of some of the what I consider false expectations in mythology that I was going to say that the public expects from artists, but I actually think it's what artists expect from other artists, even though they fucking ought to know better. I know it sounds a little harsh, but actually, I don't know. It's like Robert Frost said this quote that I constantly am thinking about. He said, "You don't talk about a poem, you talk around it." And I think that he's very pithy. That kind of sums it up, right? So I think it's cool to talk about not talking about it, or not trying to like analyze it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the best things I ever saw was Philip Guston. I talk about this film all the time. This film about Philip Guston, and he actually talks incredibly articulately about why he can't analyze his work, which is so cool. It's like, I wish more people would see that in crit class.
It's interesting that there's an analysis on not being able to analyze your work. You know, it's like an analysis of the non-analysis. It's like there's still always something like to say.
That's the I mean, I guess that's the kind of, to me, that contradiction is endearing. Mm-hmm. It's like the hypocrisy of human nature is often seen as a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But there's something kind of warm and real about it. Mm-hmm. So, like, we want to know, we want to understand, but then it's also important. I mean, I think about this as a teacher. I don't know if teaching is something that you're interested in doing at any point. But the thing is, now I'm starting to feel like a real responsibility to not promote the wrong ideology of like laying this trip on my students to be to like be able to be smarty pants about their work. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I don't think that I want them to try and like understand what they're trying to feel.
Right.
So it is like, it's very tricky.
Yeah, I will say that my first painting teacher, who I really connected with and I really felt like taught me the things that I wanted to know and I can understand in a way. It taught me the way and I can fully understand. He never wanted us to really explain anything. He was just like, this is a great painting, and he would tell us why he thought it was a great painting or a not great painting. Yeah. And he'd be like, tell us, why did you do this here? And we'd be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And then he'd be like, okay. And that'd be about, like, it, and then we would take a long period of time where we just look at the work. We walk around, we just look at the work. We've had light conversation, but we never had, like, this super hard, like...
The critique.
Yeah. And it was like I said, when you go to Cal State, when I went to Cal State Fullerton, I was like... What is this? Like, I'm mortified. Like, of course, because it can be really terrifying.
Tell me about it, man.
Put you up front, and the people will just throw tomatoes at you until you say the right thing, right?
I mean, it's really... Now, this is very interesting, because my painting... I studied in a small private college with this guy who was my mentor since I was 7. I went to college and studied with him more. Mm-hmm. And this is amazing. Do you know that I never had a single formal critique in my entire 4 years of college?
Really?
No, we did not do them.
Was it required at all? Like,
it just didn't exist in the structure of the school or the classes. And this guy was Jules Kirschenbaum is his name, and he has a piece in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and he showed at the Forum Gallery, which is a super well-known realist gallery in New York City. Mm-hmm. So it's not like this guy didn't have rigor, but I don't know, man. It's like he was not hooked into the art school circuit like Yale. Yeah. At the time, it was more Yale, Stanford, Tyler, whatever. They all changed. Now it's UCLA and CalArts, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I did not have that experience until I went to grad school, and I had the same experience you did, Julia. I walked into the seminar. I was 22 years old when I went to grad school, and I took the bullet. I took the first critique from this guy named Lou Marinaro, who I really love. This guy. He's a super great. I don't know if he's still teaching at Michigan, but he's a real Yaley. And it was just like, why? And just like, he was like a parrot. Mm-hmm. And
kept going.
Actually, I'll tell you this story. This will make you feel better. Admittedly, I was one of the typical first-year grad students, and everything I did sucked for the entire year. So I was easy pickings. Mm-hmm. So I put up some shitty, terrible painting, first critique, and he's kind of almost laughing about it. He goes, "Well, why do you paint the way you do?" I'm like, I said something about the painting tells me what to do, and he goes, "Oh yeah, what'd it say?"
Oh no.
I was like, never mind. But he did buy me a
secret. Fuck up.
No, I know. I mean, it was humiliating, but it's like that kind of. Yeah. Anyway.
Man, I mean,
I don't know. I've kind of come all the way around to thinking maybe everybody needs to go through that critique thing as a rite of passage, but sometimes I really do question the value of it. But I don't know.
I mean, I'll tell you my what I was talking about before we started. I had an experience that like really shook me big time, and it was because it was the critiques. And
at Fullerton?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was my first critique, thinking about it. And I had come into the first 2 semesters. I can't remember the semesters and how they had worked out for me, but it was like, the first 2 semesters I did ceramics and I did the writing class. I did a few other things, and then my first critique class was with Kyung, and at that time I had actually thought that I wanted to go into doing conservation.
Oh,
and I was so I've always been super interested in Latin American art and you know, the Mayan art and Aztec art and just the history in general. And I was like, I got to a point where I was like, I think I want to go into conservation and just like be around these things all the time and help preserve them and do the sketches of the things that we find, you know, if there's anything left to find out there, I want to be there in that. And so I like committed to it like full force. And so I had Kyung's class, and I was studying it, I was reading it. I had planned to go on a trip to Mexico, which I did a study abroad at Cal State Fullerton, to Mexico for 2 weeks, and it was awesome. And I brought in all these, we were doing collage, and I brought in all these images of like things that I'd printed out, because I was like, I want to make something that's just like inspired by the Mayan culture, right? Yeah. And so I had all these cutouts, and I made this like storyline, and I did all this like awesome stuff, and I was so excited about it. And the final project that I did was, I had bought this Mayan textiles book, and I was reading through it, and I was looking at all the textiles, and they're so beautiful, and they're so colorful, and there's these symbols on them that represent things in the local communities, just like the idea of the local community, how it's meaningful to the women who create these. It's just all very original. And I took this one symbol that I liked, and I painted it on paper. I did this oil painting on paper, and I took this symbol and I blew it up, right? And it was my way of just studying it. I wasn't making it as my personal painting that I was going to go sell off in the world, right? And so I talked to Kyung about it. I was like, Kyung, this is what I'm doing. This is educational for me. Like, I love this. I think it's so fun. Like, this is my path to my being a conservationist. And so I brought my book to class. I put the drawing up. I brought my book to class. I read an excerpt from it, and I was like, this is what the symbol means, and I was just like telling a story about it, and I was like, this is why I'm doing this. And did you oh my gosh, the class like ate me up. Like,
I can imagine a number of ways it might have gone.
Yeah, it did not go well, and I was
I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing
it's hilarious, because I really was put in my place big time, because everybody thought, like, you know, everybody else is making personal work that is like something that they can imagine themselves like selling, or like just like building their artistic career off of. But this was just something fun I was just doing for myself, realistically, and it did not translate that way. And I was pretty much called out openly, and they were like, why are you doing this? Like, why this is like big time like plagiarism, and I can't believe you're not making your own things, and why are you putting this on this, and why are you doing this and this and this? And I was just like I didn't have a thing to say.
By the way, Julia, like, I actually call bullshit on that critique. not because you were traumatized, but I actually think that's a bunch of crap, because I think that objective. There's, you know how many artists in the white cube art world do work like that? Actually, so
a lot.
I think that idea that work has to be personal and quote authentic and original is a load of crap. Actually, it can be. But too bad you didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that at that time.
I mean, it's not your fault.
In that moment, I was like, this is my first time in this painting class. I wanted to be able to connect with people and do the things that I was like really passionate about at that time, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, I was just like, I was so put aback by that, and it was so like traumatizing. And
I'm sorry.
It went through a period of time where I was like, I don't know how to connect with anyone here, because nobody understands what I'm trying to do, and I don't understand what everybody else is trying to do, and why this was so bad. But Kyung did understand, and she was like, stood up for me, and she was like,
oh, that's great. She's very kind and open-minded about that. But you can't control. The truth is that, I guess the perspective I would also give you is that when you put your work out into the world can be vicious. I mean, I found that in therapy. Like this group that was supposedly like a safe place could be vicious. Yeah. Just like, it's just part of human nature. Yeah. So you have to be able to deal with it. In some ways, it's good that you have to go through that. Not that not that you want to choose it, or that you. Yeah, I would never run my critiques like that personally, but it's going to happen out there. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Do you feel tougher now? I mean, I'm curious if you feel if that was kind of like a boot camp-ish training ground. Do you feel you can handle it more now? You could handle it again?
I think that I have to. I think that I have no choice. I will say that it will affect me sometimes, and I say that it because it happens still regularly with the social media account and happening downtown LA. Yes.
How so?
There's 200 something people, 200 something thousand people on that account. Right. And there are some mean people on there, and some of the things that are posted, like, I mean, that doesn't really have anything to do with me, but you see this account that you are a part of, and you're like helping curate and whatever, and people are just like ripping it to like, what are you guys doing? This sucks. Like, where's the good content? You know, like all this stuff. It's like constant critique all the time, and it just changed platforms.
You know where I did notice that with, I can't remember the yoga teacher that you had on who was amazing. What was her name? Sarah. There were some weird troll guys. Did you see them?
Every single live stream we had, there's always somebody. I
was actually yelling back at them
for like whatever, you know, some really mean stuff.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. I mean, okay. I mean, I don't even want to get into that. We can't.
That's a whole other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all. I guess if you are in the social eye, you are going to face something.
Yeah.
And I actually don't mind it. It turns out I don't mind it. I kind of like it.
I think you're like born to like do that, to like handle it.
I am,
in a sense. Yeah. I think you handle it very well, at least outwardly. You know,
yeah,
like
you haven't seen some of the troll arguments I've gotten into.
Be able to address people that way.
Well, anyway, I guess discomfort. It's interesting. I didn't really expect to talk about this, but maybe this is interesting. Discomfort for many people equals death. I mean, I know that sounds dramatic, but it seems like that's the worst possible outcome, that a lot of people cannot deal with it.
Yeah.
And when I was in recovery therapy, the whole thing was about not just dealing with discomfort, but leaning into it intentionally. And I mean, honestly, I am a different person because of that, and just in terms of thinking about that, and it's really changed how I think about making art. Yeah. Even the discomfort parts. So maybe it's those parts that drive you crazy, that make you cry or frustrated or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, I would think that as a yoga practitioner, and do you meditate also? You must.
Sometimes, not as much as I.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No. I believe that is a huge amount of value in it, and I'm an advocate for it. But I will say that I don't do it as much as
I don't either.
Somebody might see. And Alex is always like, every day he's like, want to meditate, and sometimes I'm like, no, I don't want to.
Does he have a super rigorous? I get the feeling.
Day, yeah.
I have been more now, but not. I bet I'm not as good as him.
That's a whole other conversation.
No, I'm not trying to play comparisons. You know,
it's all good.
Yeah.
How much time we?
Oh, we have 20 minutes left.
We do. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Well, no, there are things other things. I mean, so one thing I'm interested in is, did you get into yoga recently?
No, I've been practicing yoga since I was 16.
Okay.
I'm 27, so 11 years now. I found it in Tennessee, in my small town. This little studio opened up. I was just literally just curious, and I was like, what is this place? And so my friend and I went, and the yoga instructor was like, you can come for free every Sunday. And so we did. We went every Sunday. And it was so fun. It was like something like cool that I could do, like in a town like where there's nothing to do, you know, besides like smoke pot and get into trouble. And so
did you take to it right away? I mean, did you know that it was like a something that would change your whole like life cycle or daily cycle thing, or did that happen later?
I didn't know it would change me in terms of how I live my life and function and how I, observe my body, but at that time I was also in the color guard. Do you know what the color guard is?
Is that like a Yeah, I think so. High school is this
dance. It's dance oriented, and it involves flag, spinning a huge flag, saber, rifle. It's inspired by traditional military. So and halftime shows at the bands. And so there's some with the band in the summer, and then there's winter guard, and it's very artistic. And so I was in color guard for 2 years during that same time that I'd found yoga, and it translated so well between the two, because we were doing ballet and we were doing jazz dance and we were doing all these things that just like require your body to move in all these ways, and yoga just supplemented that. And so I was like, oh, this is perfect. I understand it, because we're literally doing the same thing in this sense. And then it wasn't until I came to California that I realized that there was like a whole other way to view it in terms of how it can affect your mind too, and how it can help you heal in certain ways, and it can help make you feel better. And that came later.
You seem like you're a super serious practitioner. I mean, based on the images of you doing it, I mean, you look like a textbook.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have did you do a teacher training?
No.
No, you haven't.
No, I don't feel like teaching is my calling in that sense. Like, I feel like there are a lot of people who practice yoga are like, I just want to go be a teacher because that just seems like the natural transition, and you can make money off of it. But the market is just like oversaturated here.
No,
like
I'm
everybody's
sure.
a yoga instructor.
Yeah, no, I know. In LA, particularly.
Yeah, and so it's just not something that's for me. Although I will expect to practice it forever, as far as I'm concerned, because there's such a huge benefit to it.
Oh man,
yeah,
no, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, Alex, he was naturally a yoga photographer before I even met him, and so I was like, I've been practicing yoga for a while, so naturally, he takes photos of me, and it's just kind of like.
How did you guys meet? You don't have to tell me, but I'm curious.
We met at Trader Joe's.
Oh, because you were working.
I was working at Trader Joe's for 6 years.
Right.
I just recently left last November.
Right.
And he was a customer. I was on register, and he was a customer, and he came in through my line, and I was like, hi, like, same questions, what are you doing today, how's your day, whatever, and he's like, I'm going to my studio to paint, and I was like, I'm in. And that's pretty much,
that was it.
And that's pretty much how it
I'm
went.
going with you.
Yeah, I was like, I'll see you there later. Like,
that's nice.
Yeah, because I was doing the same thing, and so we talked for a week over text, and I was like, you want to go hang out, whatever, so we did, and then it just pretty much has been since then, so it's been, I don't know, over 2 years.
Yeah.
Feels like a long time. It feels like it's been longer, but.
I mean, you seem very, I don't know, not that I'm a good judge, but I mean, you can feel the connection. Mm-hmm. It was really nice to talk to you guys on the podcast, on your podcast, because you could feel that.
Yeah.
In a really kind of normal, organic way.
I think we both have a drive, and Alex is the type of person who gets super fixated on things and obsessive on things in a good way. Can be in a bad way too sometimes.
I know that feeling, man. But I think we're similar that way.
But it's a strength in this sense because we are doing so many things that require a lot of detail and attention, and both him and I are definitely on that level of like, yes, we can do it all, and we can do all these cool things, and it's like the creativity is limitless, and so we definitely work together in that way.
You seem like you complement each other when you need to, but you're also simpatico, which that's a great kind of. Do you? So I'm curious. Do you collaborate? Have you ever collaborated? Well, no. I know. What am I saying? Of course you did. So is collaboration something that you're interested in? Because you definitely have a strong solo practice.
Yeah, we. I mean, I think that our first collaboration was crates. In a sense, and he built the crates and I painted the crates.
Yeah.
And we worked on the design together on Illustrator.
Yeah.
And then, that was our first collaboration. In terms of like paintings, we have ideas that we talk about all the time, and we've bought materials like that we've needed from Home Depot or whatever to put things together, and then we just always end up doing other things. It's just like our physical, like, in a visual art sense for paintings and sculpture, whatever, it just never come to fruition.
But wouldn't you say you're the artery?
Isn't that a collaboration? Form of collaboration.
I mean,
at this moment,
it seems like it. A major one.
Yeah, it's just not a medium that we had I think it expected to get to.
Right.
At least that's quickly. Definitely collaborating, but not in the way that I had already planned it on my head meticulously.
So I'm curious. Did one of you take the lead in wanting to do a podcast, or was it kind of organically mutual? Or
I was super against doing the podcast in the beginning. I was like, no way, I don't want to do this.
Did he want you to, or did he just want to do it on his own?
He wanted me to do it from the beginning, for sure. And we had he had a plan to do the podcast with somebody else in the year before the pandemic even happened. Yeah. And so it was supposed to be the guy who owns Happening now, and he's kind of setting it all up, and then Alex and the other girl were going to do the podcast together, and I was never really a part of it. I was just like, whatever, I don't care, you do your thing.
Right.
And then later on it came around where they wanted me in the podcast, and I was like, I actually don't really want to be in it.
You were reluctant.
Yeah, I was super reluctant. I was like, I don't want to be in it. I think 3 people on the podcast is too many people. It's just like, it's fine how it is. Like, leave me alone. And so then we were not able to work with her anymore. And so they're like, now we have to find a new person. Obviously, you're the person we want to do. And I was like, no, I don't want to be on camera. I have too many things I need to do. Like, I'm too stressed out. Like, I don't want to do this. This is not for me. Yeah. And so it went through a few weeks, and they were delaying the podcast and blah, blah, blah. And so then they're finally like, look, just come on for one episode and just tell them that you're going to be on Art pottery because I was just going to do behind the scenes and I was just going to create things and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I'll just go on and introduce myself as whoever. And we interviewed Linda, the ceramicist that we have in our gallery right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is so much fun.
Okay, that's cool.
I was like, of course, I'm going to do this. Yeah. And it ended up working out because Alex and I can do the podcast together and we live together. So it's like we go home and we do the things we need to do together for the podcast, and then we go do the podcast. And it's not like we have to meet.
Right.
Well, we have to meet over here to do it this time. And
it's pretty organic.
Yeah. It all works out very well.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, it seems like personality-wise, it's kind of good to have somebody who's super outgoing and maybe a little, I don't know, it's kind of classic in a way.
Yeah. It can be frustrating sometimes because he has a level of energy that I just can't meet sometimes, and I'm like, all right, you need to calm down because I can't meet you there.
Maybe he needs to be. Maybe you need to calm him.
So
he needs you to calm him down.
Yeah, we like can balance each other out.
I can relate to that.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So maybe you could talk a little. I mean, we have a few minutes. You're moving locations for the podcast, right?
Yes.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so can no longer do it at that space. And we had expected that to happen, but it just didn't realize it was going to happen the way it did and so quickly. And so we do have an opportunity for a new space. It's not, I wouldn't say it was completely solid yet, but the owner of the building is giving us kind of the opportunity to rebuild the building. So that's actually another project that we've just recently taken on, which is to build a whole new kitchen in this space, to build a whole new bathroom, to build a podcast room, to to do stuff for this space for him, and he'll just provide us with all the materials, and in exchange we'll be able to use the place for a podcast space. So it might not be long term, but it is just right outside of downtown LA. So it's still accessible.
I mean, maybe it's just the way of things right now. I mean, this is what a weird. Everything feels itinerant to me.
Yeah.
A little bit these days.
Yeah.
Are you? What I was gonna ask you something else. Do you we talked a little bit before the podcast how you kind of are. You don't necessarily work all the time. Like some people are like little worker bees, and you're more of a. I guess I used the word binger, which I don't mean that implication, but. When you're not in the middle of working on a whole thing, are you thinking about what you want to do next, or are you just letting the fuel build back up?
I definitely always have ideas.
Yeah.
Even if I don't write them down or put them anywhere, they're still it'll pop in my mind. I'll be like, I want to do that. That'd be so cool, and then I'll think about it for a little bit, and then I'll let it go, and I'll we'll do whatever else I'm doing. I'll usually. I have my periods of time where I work on things really intensely for a couple weeks, and then I don't want to do anything, and I'll just look for distractions, I should be. I keep telling in my mind, I'm like, I should be working, I should be doing stuff,
I know that.
Whatever.
I think distractions are important.
But I'll spend half the day just playing with my cat, or and then the other half just driving around trying to look for things to buy because it's fulfilling this need that I have or whatever.
I mean, the poet John Ashbery one time I remember reading an interview where he's basically he wakes up at 6 and then. He thinks maybe I should start writing. It's 5:30 and he's getting ready to have dinner and he just has just frittered the day away. And I mean, I know that.
Yeah.
So actually, I know what I was going to ask you. I'm curious if there are artists that you find particularly inspiring, either for your work or just as examples of people that are inspiring figures. Or if you don't think, some people don't think that way.
I have a very small few people that I look at and remember more intensely. I would come across the social media is so flooded with stuff, and just content all the time. I always see things and I'm like, ooh, this is cool, but you don't necessarily make note of who it is.
Right.
But I do have this one artist that I just recently, within the past few months, came across. Her name is Kelly Whitmer, and she lives in Joshua Tree, and she makes sculpture. She makes these sculptural pieces that you can put on the wall. You can also just set them on your table. She's turned them into fountains, and she's turned them into light fixtures, but they're made from ceramic and glass. So she has half of it is ceramic, and then she incorporates these glass pieces onto the front, and they're very organic, and they're very naturally colored in a sense, more kind of just earthy tones, with the exception of the glass. Sometimes the glass is super hyper blue and super shiny and reflective, and I have just for whatever reason, I'm just like so like I want one. Like it's like I love her work and I think she's super inspiring, but I also really want to own one at the same time. And so like I'm always looking at her stuff at the moment.
That's interesting. Well, yeah, what you said about not necessarily. I mean, I'm quite a bit older than you are. Not going to admit it, but it's kind of a different model now. Like I remember, we all were almost forced to have to find out who our pantheon of heroes are, and we would talk. We would like it would be an assignment, and so. But it's just a different world now.
It is,
like whenever I'm teaching, I'm like, who do you guys like? I'm in my 2D class, and like they never know the names. And I used to think it was terrible, but I don't think it actually is terrible now. It's just a different model.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's interesting. So, but I don't always ask that, but I'm always curious if there is like, if artists have heroes that they just, like Philip Guston talked about how he had this poster or print of this one painting, Renaissance painting, that he literally put up in every studio he ever had, as almost like a picture of Jesus for him, So anyway.
Yeah. No, I get you. I get what you're saying.
Well, is there anything that you are wanting to say that you haven't expressed?
No, I'm just like what I always like to mention in our podcast is like to artists, like we're all feeling the same way about our work. We hate our work and we think it's nothing, and then somebody else sees it and they love it, and you can become something from that, and you can get something from that, and like make connection with other people and find other artists to collaborate with, and this all just very important things that I just want to highlight. And I went my last semester of college, I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I'm going to work at Trader Joe's forever. And like, I want to do this.
Which would be nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. Trader Joe's is an amazing job, but I knew it wasn't for me.
I know.
And I was feeling stuck, like, because you think you're going to get a job right away out of college because that's just kind of how it sets up. I know
that.
And I was like, I don't know, like what's going to happen. And, the doubts are normal. And I feel I'm so proud. I will say I'm so proud of myself for where I am now. Yeah. And I hope everyone else can find pride in themselves as well. Like I want to just be like motivational in that for that moment.
Well, I mean, you guys both are definitely inspirations to me. Yeah. I will say that sincerely.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
And I'm actually, aside from, no, come on. But I'm actually, aside from this conversation, I actually feel like it's a cool kind of collaborative relationship that we're just developing, and I'm really looking forward to keeping it kind of going.
Keep making stuff, and we'll have you in our art gallery.
Yes, that's the deal.
You're in.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in.